every single day, somewhere in Britain, someone drives a car or walks on foot across a bridge that was built before Christopher Columbus reached the Americas, before the printing press existed, before the Wars of the Roses tore this country apart. They do it without looking down, without checking the stonework, without wondering for even a moment whether the bridge will hold. It holds. It has held for 600 years or more, and it will almost certainly hold tomorrow. Britain has roughly 6,000 bridges listed as historically significant by Historic England and its Scottish and Welsh counterparts, but scattered among them are structures so old that the communities who built them left no blueprints, no architect's drawings, no construction records, just stone, shaped by hand, placed with a precision that modern engineers still admire, and still standing. This is Cottage Dreams, and today we are crossing 15 bridges across England, Wales and Scotland that were built before 1426 and are still being used daily, not preserved behind barriers, not closed off for conservation, still carrying weight, still carrying people home. Some of these bridges bore the armies of the English Civil War. Some survived the Black Death. One was ordered rebuilt by the Domesday Book. Another was partially destroyed by Jacobite rebels. And all of them, every single one, was crossed by someone this morning who probably had no idea what was beneath their feet. We begin on Exmoor. The River Barle runs through a wooded valley on the southern edge of Exmoor in Somerset. The trees close in on both sides. The water is shallow but fast, and crossing it is a bridge that may be 3,000 years old. Tar Steps is the longest clapper bridge in Britain. 55 metres of flat stone slabs resting on rough pillars set into the riverbed, with 17 spans stretching from bank to bank. No mortar holds it together. No cement, no metal, just gravity and the weight of stone on stone. The date of its construction is disputed. Some archaeologists place it around 1000 BC, others suggest the medieval period. What is not disputed is the method. Enormous slabs of local stone, some weighing over 2 tons, were dragged to the river and laid flat across upright pillars, standing roughly 2 meters apart. There are no handrails, no safety barriers. You step onto the first slab and you walk across with water rushing beneath your feet, and nothing between you and the river but your own balance. Local legend says the devil built Tar Steps as a sunbathing spot and threatened to destroy anyone who crossed it. A cat was sent over first to test the claim. The cat survived. The vicar followed. The devil, apparently, lost interest. What did not lose interest was the River Barle. Floods have washed the bridge away multiple times. In the early 1940s and again in the early 1950s, the centre spans were destroyed completely. Both times, the local community retrieved the original stones from downstream and rebuilt the bridge exactly as it had been. The same stones, the same arrangement. Walkers and horse riders still cross it daily on the Two Moors Way. There is a modern footbridge nearby. People choose the old one. 30 miles south across the Devon border, Dartmoor opens up into a landscape of granite and heather and wide empty sky. The East Dart River cuts through it near the village of Post Bridge, and spanning that river is another clapper bridge, this one dated to the 13th century. 3 massive granite slabs, each weighing several tons, rest on stone piers barely a metre above the water. Nobody knows exactly who built it. Nobody knows how the slabs were moved into position without machinery. What is known is that pack horses crossed here for centuries, carrying tin from the Dartmoor mines to the stannery towns for weighing and taxation. A modern road bridge stands right beside it. Cars use that one. Walkers use the medieval one. The granite is worn smooth in the centre of each slab, where 800 years of feet have passed. Dartmoor swallows most things eventually. Farms, villages, mine workings. They all disappear under gorse and bracken. But not this bridge. The moor has tried. The bridge remains. Travelling northeast to Lincoln, we find a bridge that stopped being just a crossing a very long time ago. High Bridge over the River Witham was built in 1160 and is the oldest bridge in England that still has buildings standing on it. The original structure included a chapel dedicated to Thomas Becket, built shortly after his murder in Canterbury Cathedral. That chapel is long gone. What replaced it and what remains today is a row of Tudor timber-framed buildings that sit directly on top of the medieval stonework. You can walk into a cafe on this bridge, order a cup of tea, and drink it while sitting above an arch that was laid when Henry II was king. Below you, narrowboats try to squeeze through the central arch, which locals have called the Glory Hole for centuries. In the medieval period, it had a darker name. It was known as the Murder Hole because it was said that victims of violence were dropped from the bridge into the river at that spot. The arch is so tight that it restricts the size of any vessel that wants to navigate between Brayford Pool and the sea. Boatmen have been cursing it for 800 years. High Bridge still functions as a pedestrian high street. People cross it carrying shopping bags from the market. The buildings above creak and lean at angles that would alarm a modern surveyor. Beneath them, the river flows through stonework that has been standing since before Magna Carta was signed. A bridge that became a street that forgot it was a bridge. Following the Thames westward into Oxfordshire, we reach the oldest surviving bridge on the river. Radcot Bridge was built around 1200. Its pointed arches, shaped from Tainton's stone by Cistercian monks who had been granted land for the purpose by King John. For most of its life, Radcot Bridge carried traffic between Wessex and Mercia across a quiet stretch of the upper Thames where the river is narrow and the fields are flat. It is a peaceful spot. Cattle graze nearby, willows trail in the water. Nothing about it suggests violence. But on the 19th of December 1387, this bridge became a battlefield. Troops loyal to King Richard II were retreating westward when they found that the central arch had been deliberately destroyed. Henry Bolingbroke, Richard's cousin and the future king, Henry IV, had ordered the arch removed to trap the royalist forces and force them to fight. It worked. The battle that followed was one of the opening chapters in the power struggle that would eventually lead to the Wars of the Roses. The bridge was rebuilt. The arch was restored. The field went back to grazing. Today, the A4095 crosses Radcot Bridge, and most of the drivers using it will have no idea they are passing over a site where the seeds of a dynastic war were planted. The Tainton stone has weathered to a pale grey. The Thames barely whispers beneath it. If you did not know what happened here, you would see nothing but a pretty country bridge in the Oxfordshire countryside. Moving north to County Durham, Elvet Bridge over the River Wear carries the A177 directly into the heart of the city. It was first built around 1228 and has been repaired, widened, and partially rebuilt in every century since. In its medieval life, this bridge was a community in itself. A chapel, a prison, and a row of houses stood along its length. People lived on it. People were locked up on it. People prayed on it, all while the River Wear flowed beneath them, and Durham Cathedral rose on the hill above. The houses and the chapel are gone. The prison is gone. What remains are the medieval arches carrying a stream of modern traffic that never pauses to consider what is beneath the tarmac. Thousands of people cross Elvet Bridge every day. Students heading to lectures, tourists walking toward the cathedral and castle, locals running errands in the city centre. The bridge has carried monks to prayer, miners to the pits, and soldiers to war. It carries coffee shop customers to their morning drink. With the same patient indifference, 8 centuries of Durham's life have crossed this bridge. The stones do not distinguish between any of them. Crossing the border into Wales, we come to something unique in the whole of Britain. Monobridge in Monmouth is the only remaining fortified river bridge in Great Britain that still has its gate tower standing on the bridge itself. The bridge dates to 1272. The tower was added sometime between 1297 and 1315, built with defensive openings in the floor called machicolations that allowed defenders to drop stones or pour boiling liquid onto anyone trying to force their way across. The gate formed part of the town's walls. Its purpose was both military and financial. It defended the town from attack, and it collected tolls from anyone coming to market. Over the centuries that followed, the tower served as a jail, a munitions store, and a private lodge. In 1645, Royalist cavalry fought at Monnow Bridge during the English Civil War, and the scars of that conflict still mark the stonework. Arrow slits remain visible in the tower walls. The machicolations are still there. You can look up through them and see the sky through slots that were designed for killing. In 2004, a new road bridge was opened nearby, and Monnow Bridge was given over to pedestrians. The traffic stopped, the exhaust fumes cleared, and for the first time in decades, people could walk across the bridge without competing with lorries and see it for what it truly is. On market days, locals cross it, carrying bags of vegetables and loaves of bread, passing beneath a medieval war tower without breaking stride. It is the last of its kind in Britain. Every other fortified bridge gate has been demolished, collapsed, or removed. This one survived because the people of Monmouth would not let it go. Returning to Devon, we find a bridge that owes its survival not to kings or armies, but to an entire town that refused to let it fall down. Bideford Long Bridge was first built around 1280 as a pack horse crossing over the River Torridge. It was originally timber. By the 14th century, it was being rebuilt in stone, and the method used was extraordinary. The new stone piers were constructed around the existing wooden bridge, using the timber structure as a kind of scaffolding because the wooden spans were not uniform in width. The stone arches that replaced them were not uniform either. The bridge has 24 arches, and no two are the same size. The traditional explanation is charming. Each arch was said to have been funded and built by a different trade guild in the town, which is why they vary so much. Another tradition holds that the bridge piers were built on bales of wool sunk into the riverbed as foundations, just as the old London Bridge was said to have been. Maintaining the bridge became a community obsession. In the 15th century, the Pope himself issued a letter calling for the repair of the Bridge of Bideford on account of its faulty wooden structure. Bishops offered indulgences to anyone who contributed money. A dedicated bridge trust managed the crossing for centuries, collecting tolls and organizing repairs. In 1968, one of the arches collapsed and the Department of Transport took over maintenance. The bridge still carries the A386. It still connects Bideford to East the Water, as it has done for over 700 years. The trust still exists. The town still cares. 24 arches, no two alike, all still standing. East to Norfolk. Bishop Bridge in Norwich crosses the River Wensums on the eastern side of the city. It was built in 1340 and is one of the oldest bridges in England, still carrying motor vehicles on its original medieval stonework. A gatehouse completed in 1343 once stood on the bridge and controlled access to the city until it was removed in 1791. The bridge saw fighting during Kett's Rebellion in 1549, when Norfolk peasants rose against the enclosure of common land and marched on Norwich. Rebels and royal troops clashed on and around this bridge in some of the bloodiest confrontation of the uprising. Bishop Bridge survived that rebellion. It survived 2 world wars. It survived the arrival of the motor car, which placed stresses on the stonework that no medieval mason could have anticipated. Today it handles buses, delivery vans, and commuter traffic on a single surviving arch that is nearly 700 years old. It is not famous. It does not appear on postcards. It simply works, as it has worked every day since the Black Death was still a living memory. Heading north into West Yorkshire, Wakefield Bridge offers something found in only a handful of places in the whole of England. A medieval bridge with a chapel still attached. The stone bridge was built between 1342 and 1356, 9 yards spanning 320 feet across the River Calder. Construction was almost certainly interrupted by the Black Death, which reached Wakefield in 1349 and killed over a third of the population, including the vicar. The chapel on the bridge is dedicated to St. Mary the Virgin and is the oldest and most ornate of the surviving bridge chapels in England. The chapel survived the Reformation for a purely structural reason. Its walls were keyed into the bridge's stonework so tightly that demolishing the chapel would have collapsed the bridge. Destroying it would have meant losing the crossing, and the crossing was too valuable. So, the chapel stood. What happened to it after the Reformation would be comic if it were not so undignified. From roughly 1545 until the early 19th century, the chapel was given over to secular uses. It served as a corn merchant's office, a newsroom, and for a sustained period, a cheese shop, a medieval chapel of extraordinary craftsmanship, used for storing and selling cheese. The bridge played its part in the Wars of the Roses. The Battle of Wakefield was fought about a mile south in 1460, and the Earl of Rutland was killed near the bridge while trying to escape. The painter, J.M.W. Turner visited Wakefield in 1793 and produced a watercolour of the bridge and chapel that still survives today. The bridge is closed to motor vehicles but open to pedestrians. The chapel has been restored. The cheese is gone. The stonework endures. South to Kent and into a landscape of orchards, oast houses and hop gardens, East Farley Bridge over the River Medway dates from the 14th century and has been described by more than one historian as the finest medieval bridge in the south of England. 5 stone arches span the river in a gentle curve. The surrounding countryside is so quintessentially English that it almost feels staged. Apple trees line the banks. Oast houses with their distinctive conical roofs stand in the middle distance. A lock beside the bridge is popular with narrow boaters who moor up and walk into the village for a meal. The bridge is narrow, so narrow that modern traffic has to take turns, crossing, controlled by traffic lights that would have baffled the medieval builders. A weight restriction protects the stonework from heavy vehicles. Locals treat this restriction with a seriousness that borders on devotion. In 1648, Oliver Cromwell's parliamentary troops marched across East Farley Bridge on their way to fight royalist forces in Maidstone, the same stone that bore the weight of armoured cavalry and cannon now bears the weight of a family car on the school run. The bridge does not seem to mind. It has seen worse. Staying in Kent, just a few miles along the Medway, the medieval bridge at Aylesford dates to the 14th century and carries the village's main road over the river. The crossing point here is ancient, beyond easy comprehension. A battle between Britons and Saxons was fought at Aylesford in 455 AD, more than 1500 years ago. The Friars, a Carmelite priory, stands beside the bridge. The route across the river formed part of the Pilgrim's Way, a medieval path that carried the faithful from Thames Winster to the shrine of Thomas Becket at Canterbury Cathedral. Stone arches, worn and patched and reinforced across 7 centuries, carry a steady flow of vehicles. The bridge is narrow enough to require patience. The village clusters around it. The priory looks down from the hillside. Saxon warriors, medieval pilgrims, Carmelite monks, Victorian farmers, and 21st century commuters, all of them have used the same crossing point over the same river for the same simple reason. It is where the road meets the water, and someone long ago put stones in the way, west to Chester, and to a bridge that compresses more layers of British history into its red sandstone arches than almost any other crossing in the country. The Old Dee Bridge carries the road from Lower Bridge Street to Handbridge across the River Dee. A bridge on this site existed in the Roman period when Chester was the fortress city of Diva Victrix. The current structure is largely the result of a major rebuilding in 1387, making the visible stonework over 600 years old. It is a Grade 1 listed building and a scheduled ancient monument. The Domesday Book of 1086 records that the provost of Chester Castle could summon one man from every hide of land in Cheshire to rebuild the city's walls and bridge. That is how important this crossing was. Not a local convenience, but a regional obligation. If the bridge fell, the whole county was expected to rebuild it. The weir beside it dates from 1093. During the Civil War siege of Chester, the bridge was deliberately damaged to prevent parliamentary forces from using it. Red sandstone arches, repaired and patched across 6 centuries, still show the scars of that decision. Today, the old Dee Bridge carries one-way traffic on a road that is in almost constant use. A stream of modern cars crosses Roman foundations and medieval stonework, while the river churns over the weir beside them. The Salmon Run still passes beneath the arches in season. Fishermen stand on the weir and cast their lines into the same water that Roman soldiers watched nearly 2,000 years ago. 7 arches of red sandstone, Roman, Norman, medieval, modern, all in one bridge, all still working. Far to the north in Northumberland, the medieval bridge at Warkworth spans the River Coquet in the shadow of one of the most dramatic castles in England, built in the 14th century to replace an earlier timber crossing. It remains the main route into the village. The bridge is narrow, a single lane with a passing place in the middle, formed by a widened cutwater where pedestrians can step aside to let vehicles through. A fortified tower at the southern end once served as a gatehouse controlling access to the town. Warkworth Castle, seat of the mighty Percy family, looms over one end. The River Coquet loops around the village in a great oxbow, and the bridge is the only way in by road. Heavy goods vehicles are banned. A weight restriction is in force, and locals treat it as a matter of personal pride. This is their bridge. It has been their bridge since the Percys held the castle. And border warfare with Scotland was a way of life. The scale is intimate. This is not a grand civic crossing. It is a village bridge that happens to be 700 years old, still dictating who can enter and how fast they can go. The castle may be a ruin, the bridge is not. Crossing into Scotland, we reach a bridge whose strategic importance once shaped the fate of nations. Stirling Old Bridge over the River Forth was built in stone around 1500, replacing earlier wooden bridges that had stood at or near the same crossing point for centuries. It was one of those earlier wooden bridges that gave this stretch of river its place in history. In 1297, William Wallace and Andrew Moray led Scottish forces to a decisive victory over the English army at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. The English knights, weighed down by armour and funneled onto a narrow wooden crossing, were cut down as they tried to cross. The battle became a defining moment in the wars of Scottish independence. The stone bridge that stands today was built 2 centuries later, but it inherited all the strategic weight of its predecessor. For over 300 years, it provided the lowest crossing point of the Forth and controlled movement between the Scottish Highlands and the Lowlands. Whoever held Stirling Bridge held Scotland. In December 1745, the Lieutenant Governor of Stirling Castle ordered of the bridge arches destroyed to hinder the movement of the Jacobite army during the last Great Rising. In 1571, a gallows was erected on the bridge to hang Archbishop Hamilton. The bridge has seen victory, execution, and deliberate destruction. It is still standing. Today, pedestrians and cyclists cross it in the kind of quiet that feels almost wrong for a place with this much blood in its past. Dogs are walked along its length. The river slides beneath arches that once decided the fate of kingdoms. One historian described it as perhaps the most strategically important river crossing in all Scotland, yet strangely quiet and detached from the town it served. That silence is the strangest thing about it. We end in Sussex. Stotham Bridge over the River Arun was built in the early 15th century around 1403, and it is one of the finest medieval bridges in southern England. 7 arches of pale sandstone cross the river in flat water meadows west of Pulborough. The central arch is raised slightly higher than the rest to allow barges to pass beneath. The bridge carried the main between Pulborough and Petworth until a bypass was built in 1986. Since then, it has been restricted to light traffic and pedestrians. The parish fought for that restriction: weight limits, traffic orders, restoration work, funded partly by the community. People who live near Stotham Bridge understand what they have and what they would lose if heavy lorries were ever allowed back. There are no battles in the history of Stotham Bridge, no sieges, no rebellions, no famous paintings, no chapels turned into cheese shops. The bridge has done nothing for 600 years except carry people across a river in one of the most beautiful settings in England. Swans gather beneath the arches. The river barely seems to move. The water meadows stretch away on both sides, flat and green and impossibly quiet. Sometimes the most remarkable thing a bridge can do is simply not fall down. These 15 are not all of them. Dozens more stand across Britain, carrying weight they were never designed for. The masons who built them left no names. They built for use, not preservation. Somewhere tonight, a bridge older than Agincourt will carry someone home, and they will not think once about the hands that shaped the stone beneath their wheels. The bridge will hold. It always does.